Well, good evening, everybody. Hope you're having a great Thursday night. This is the latest on what is, for now anyway, Tropical Storm Erin. You can see the winds are at 70 miles per hour now, so we're getting close to hurricane strength. That should probably happen sometime overnight into tomorrow morning, maybe, into a Cat 1. Here is the latest track. And it looks like it's going right to plan. All right, so we've been talking about all week that the models, and they've been pretty close. All of them have been pretty much in agreement, are going to continue with this west and then northwest movement. And then by the time we get into around Monday, a little bit more of a north-northwest, and then kind of past Tuesday into Wednesday, punching north, kind of threading the needle between Bermuda and the mid-Atlantic coast, and then back out into the Atlantic again. So, yeah, once again, once you get to a Cat 3, you're talking about a major hurricane. The Saffir-Simpson scale only goes to 5, so anything 3 and above would be considered a major hurricane. So it's a big deal, except for it looks to be just staying out over the water, which is good news. Could come close to at least bringing some wind to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, but we don't expect any impact here at this point, and we're so far, 5 days, basically, the model's agreeing. We don't see any reason at this point to change course on that. They haven't. Here's a look at the models, and of course, this makes sense. So you get farther out, you start to see a little bit of divergence here. You see things kind of spreading out. Some of the models do try to kind of come across toward the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The bulk of them, though, kind of going north. Here's Bermuda here, and just kind of hooking around it, and then back out onto the North Atlantic. So the steering currents, the way they're set up, is one that is favorable for us and the mid-Atlantic coastline to keep this thing out in the Atlantic and kind of basically pull a boomerang back into the North Atlantic. Let's see the latest Euro group, and what it's showing is a similar scenario. As a matter of fact, it actually, if you were watching this last night, had a few more going toward the west-northwest. The red was actually going more toward the Outer Banks. Now it's kind of fallen in line with this sharp turn and then back out into the Atlantic again. So again, you've seen a lot of agreement. There's consensus among the models, and they're all at least close, fairly close. Sometimes you can see these systems, and the spaghetti model plots are all over the place. You'll see them just kind of curly Q into different areas, but that's not the case with this. So as we look at this, again, this is the GFS here. The Euro model is in blue right underneath it. So there is agreement. They're stacked on top of each other right here. This starts Sunday morning. And watch as we go through time. You'll see them pretty much together. You only see maybe, let me see if this is a new run, a little bit of separation right there, but not much. Last night there was a little bit more. If anything, it separates more here with the GFS trying to take a faster, sharper turn out into the North Atlantic. But notice that both of them stay off of our coast here. I want to say I'm talking about the U.S. here, but you know, the Outer Banks, well, they're outer and they stick out. So sometimes when you have one of these grazing storms like this, they may at least get the wind wrapping around, counterclockwise flow. So you're going to get, an offshore flow. They could have some wind and some surf issues there by the time we get into Wednesday, Thursday of next week for those folks. But for us, we're not seeing any effect from that. And again, the graph model still, it's too far out for it to grab it. It would be, gosh, probably beginning of next week before we could even start to see it with the graph, because you're not getting in range of that until you get way out here toward the Bahamas to Bermuda there. So let's go forward again. If you're just joining us, 70 mile per hour winds. Again, expected to be a hurricane as we go through the overnight into maybe tomorrow morning, something like that. If you remember, on the Saffir-Simpson scale, it goes to a 5, so 3 is getting on up there. Anything 3 and above is considered a major hurricane. Once those winds get to 74 miles per hour, that's when it would leave tropical storm designation and then become the Cat 1 hurricane. So we're at 70 now. So I think sometime maybe overnight tonight, maybe the 11 o'clock advisory, we'll see if it jumps up to a hurricane at that point, and then a 2, then a 3. But notice it's all good news for a lot of folks that would have some interest here. I mean, you're talking about Puerto Rico, getting on into the Bahamas, staying away for the most part. Now, again, with the counterclockwise flow, they could have a breeze with some of that, and maybe some surf issues, some sea swell there as it comes by. but for the most part, kind of being friendly to most folks here, and then should turn and again go back out in the Atlantic. And once again, just to show you these models, the GFS group definitely starting out together and tight until we get out a few days away. And then again, you can see a little bit of separation here, but then it kind of gets back together here. So I think if there's any disagreement with the models right now, it's kind of when does it make this turn? They all say it's going to turn. Does it turn earlier around Bermuda, or does it take a little bit longer and maybe graze the outer banks of North Carolina and then go back out? Whatever it is, with these solutions here, we don't have any direct impact with that. Again, just to show you the consistency of the models. You know, it'd be one thing, and I've seen this a lot, maybe you've seen it too, or you've seen these spaghetti models and you'll have one over here, a couple of them here. Sometimes you'll get one that'll curly Q around in some weird fashion like this. You'll get a bunch of that stuff. And so there's uncertainty there. Pretty good consensus here with a turn. Again, it's just that same question. Does it turn earlier around Bermuda or a little bit later? And I noted earlier that the Euro actually has changed a fair amount from last night. We did have a few more of these outliers that were going. There's one heading toward Georgia, a couple toward the Carolinas. You see less of that now, kind of going in between North Carolina and Bermuda here. And then once it gets out into the North Atlantic, see ya. So again, it's good news that the steering currents are set up in such a way to keep this thing a fish storm, as I've been calling it through the week, is referred to usually when it's not a landfalling system. Just to show you again, the long-range models, the GFS in green, the Euro in blue. Yes, it's green, but the GFS, the color table I have on it here, also shows a little bit of a flare of where you would see more convection there, some more rain. So it's a different color table than the Euro underneath, but you get the idea. They're stacked here together. So let's go forward. This is Sunday, now getting into Monday morning. And again, kind of staying away from the Bahamas too. This is around Tuesday at 5 to 6. Little separation here. You can see the Euro in blue underneath there, kind of going a little farther west, but that's a change from last night. It was actually moving more toward North Carolina. It starts to turn there. They both do. And that could be going backwards there now. That could be good news for Bermuda if it just kind of hooks around and gets out, threads the needle there without ever even rolling directly over land. There would still be effect there, but not like a direct hit. So that would take us into around this time next week. So a long trek, again, to come all the way across the Atlantic, especially when it's now only moving at 17 miles per hour. I mean, just dawdling out there. So you can see the historic track, where it came from Africa, came off the coast, turned a little bit north, and then just lightly stood on the gas here going west across the Atlantic. And if you look at the track, a lot of times you can tell the Hurricane Center's thoughts on speed by the distance in between those numbers and those increments there. So when you see big jumps, it's going a little bit faster, and things are closer together on these timestamps, a little slower speed, and then maybe picking up some speed Monday into Tuesday. And at some point, it's going to get slingshot up and over, like we said there. So again, the wind at 70 miles per hour. 74 is when it becomes a Cat 1 hurricane. And again, I think that would probably happen overnight, tonight, into tomorrow morning, something like that. We'll see if the 11 o'clock advisory tonight does update it to a hurricane. But, and again, a Cat 3 or above is considered a major hurricane. So unless something really remarkable happened, we're not expecting any impact from this. But again, we're getting closer toward the peak of hurricane season. Anytime you're dealing with tropical stuff, it's a talker and folks want to know about it. So that's the reason why we're covering it, especially being possibly a major hurricane there. And just fingers crossed as we head on in, first to second week of September is usually around the peak of hurricane season for us there. And anything that is even remotely close by, we want to talk about it and keep an eye on it. And so far, still, this looks like something that would not impact us. Of course, if anything changes, we would let you know. But so far, everything is going as planned. We'll talk later. Hope you have a great night. Thanks for stopping by. Now let's get to the when it was actually coming through, and I remember it was all looking around going, is that wind gust real? Some of these wind gusts we were seeing, and I was doubting it. I mean, I remember we were on air, I'm like, I'm not so sure that's a real number, what this is showing. And then we saw no numbers.
Yep.
We started losing data.
Yeah, observation stations.
Yeah. Went down. And so that's when you knew something's going on, because we're not getting any data out of there. So then we eventually had to go over to velocity mode and started looking like we do when a tornado situation is going on, looking at those pixels and kind of going in and asking it questions. How fast is this moving? And that's when we were seeing some numbers that were just mind-blowing, and we're like, this is real. This is what's going on.
Well, remember how long it was? I mean, Thursday was when we started seeing subsequent bands coming up, and we had tornado warnings from that as well. And then it was all night heading into Friday morning, and then we had flash floods all morning long. It was probably one of the longest events that I've seen since we've been here. It was crazy.
Even with the fast speed, it was still so, because it was such a big storm.
The bands were extremely huge.
And it's weird because I've talked about before, the dirty side of the storm, you don't even have to be anywhere near it. I mean, this is off topic from Helene, but I remember when Katrina came through, I mean, that's New Orleans. And the outer bands were coming through here, and there was a bank in Fort Valley destroyed by a tornado on the outer bands of a storm that was centered in New Orleans. So that's just to show you the bad side of the storm, the dirty side. Now, when this thing came through, and we were looking at, it was almost kind of a blue-looking swath on the velocity mode, just these bright colors, and we knew, okay, some of these wind speeds are probably checking out. And then I remember we went to these places. Solene, I think, went to Dublin, and you start to see some of these places. And it was even more east of Dublin, Hazelhurst, places like that. I mean, you've been there. And to see, wow, trees.